So the creative practice that I have is based in production. So I'm going to be talking about water and soil and human connections and working with artists specifically. So I'm located in New York City on the island of Manhattan. So this is a view from the southern part of Manhattan. I actually live all the way north in the Harlem, um, which is not that far from where Renee is in her garden right now. Um, we're on the unceded land of the Lenape people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. Um, and it's really been a pleasure living here. I've lived and worked in New York City for decades. As you can see, it's a very built environment surrounded by water. Um, and at a particular moment in time, I moved to Harlem and joined a community garden. So as Renee spoke a little bit about the importance of public space and community gardens in connecting people, I had a very profound experience in that space. I was invited in by an elder in the neighborhood. And through that experience, I really took a deep dive. So my work life was corporate America as an advertising producer. So I facilitate creative process and have done that through my entire career. It's something that I'm passionate about and that I love. And then I just really wanted to dig in the dirt, right? So I kept passing this community garden. The gate was always closed. One day it was open. Steve was inside and he invited me in. And that just sort of, snowballed into collaborating with my neighbors. This particular space has been around for decades. And has gone through ebbs and flows of stewardship of the land. And it was a huge education. And I learned about land use, cultural differences, gentrification, racism, politics, you name it. It all just came in that space. It's not a huge space. It's about 2 buildings wide in New York City, which is actually pretty big in New York terms. But that experience really started me thinking about like conflict and how do we actually stay at the table so we can get to the good stuff. So that leaned into my creative practice and then also allowed me to explore more environmental issues. So I went back to school to Columbia, where I got an MS in negotiation and conflict resolution, and focused my studies around environmental justice and food access. Out of that came a collaboration with Prime Produce, where a lot of my co-op members are with me today, so I'm very happy about that. And what happened was my capstone project was on environmental and justice and food access in Central Harlem, which really was a conflict analysis of like, what does this actually look like? And looking at all the different groups that were doing work in that area. And it became my design research for Seeds to Soil, which became an urban ecology collective that I founded in 2017. And what you're seeing on the right are a bunch of pictures from the earlier days. So 2018, we got up on the roof. You can see that it's there is no soil, right? So that's something that's interesting. Like if you're thinking about water and soil and buildings and what that can look like if you don't have land to dig in, like what do you actually do? So you'll see some of the early stages of that project where we were installing a weather station, figuring out systems for growing. And what ended up happening was we were part of the community in the building. So we started thinking about the roof in terms of like, what is it that the building would want us to do? And what could that look like? So we leaned into a more DIY design process, which led to a lot of participatory design and engagement, ranging from, you can see those green bins, that's actually New York City compost from the compost project. in New York City, so we were able to get free compost from the city. People came and planted seeds, and we created seedlings. And then there was a lot of like planning and design processes, like in the corner on the bottom, you'll see some of the design process that was happening at that time. And then out of the work on the roof, there ended up being we were given a grant, and I worked with David Hecht, who's a longtime collaborator of mine. He's works with the Cybernetics Library, Seeds to Soil, and with Prime Produce. And we spent a lot of time thinking about what could this garden look like on the roof. And again, bringing the soil up to the roof was a challenge, right? It's not there. What do we do? Where do we get it? So it was a combination of compost as well as soil from the city, and then soil from other places as well. And then there was a lot of material sharing. So organizations like Brooklyn Grange, they gave us some of their used materials that would allow us to create these milk crates, create this milk crate system. And other organizations provided us with materials as well. So this was really a scrappy, low budget project that just spent a lot of time trying to create a creative vision for a soil-based project, but looking for partners that would allow us to actually do it. So like one of the major things, like I said, was getting the soil to the roof. We have stairs, we don't have elevators. It's a lot of work to get that much soil up. We were able to partner with an organization, a not-for-profit organization, and they connected us to a corporation. So they did a service day, and we created like this whole system of how people could create the crates downstairs and then plant and then bring it upstairs. And also, since we did it on the first floor, it allowed for people with differing abilities. So if they weren't able to go up to the roof, it wasn't a big deal. There was plenty for them to do on the first floor. And then the people who were able to make it upstairs, that was fine. So I was really happy with the outcome of that. But as you can see, there are a lot of different people touching this project. And there is some, the middle section talks about the design and what that looked like. And David spent a lot of time coming up with different ways of designing that piece of it. So that was a really awesome project. And then I just really wanted to share this with you. So this was during the pandemic. We had to figure out how we were going to care for the garden. And because we had milk crates, we brought some down onto the street. And then we started a little pilot of a distributed community garden. And this is actually what I'm showing you now is a collaborator, Randy Klein, who's a street artist in New York City. And she actually every single day would post something about her milk crate. And this is actually a video that she put together for us. Can you hear that? Can you hear? Yeah.
Actually, there is no voice.
Oh, okay, so all right, so I'll talk over it then.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Can you hear me if I turn my volume down?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically, she's talking about the impact of the crates for her. Like, she was by herself. It was a pandemic. She was used to interacting with people on the street. She wasn't comfortable going outside. She wanted to go to the protest, but didn't have a way that she felt comfortable doing that. So really, she spent a lot of time on the roof. And she's a photographer as well as an illustrator. And this actually helped her mentally during the pandemic because it was an incredibly stressful time, especially in our neighborhood. She lived in Harlem as well at the time. And it was an amazing outlet for her to like try and figure out 20 different ways. It was actually more than 20 different ways of how to actually take a picture of the milk crate. So it allowed her to find a way to connect with people. She was able to post on Instagram and create a community around it. And then also as an individual, it helped her get through the pandemic. So that's what you're seeing here with the imagery. And so I'm just going to let it keep running and then I'll just wrap up quickly. And she's talking about how the connection with people and art is so critical to combat loneliness. And this is the thing that actually kept her from going down the rabbit hole. So I think this leans into something that a lot of people don't think about in terms of gardening. It's really the health and well-being of people mentally and physically, like how is really impacted by being around what's going on.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm over time, so can I keep going for 2 seconds? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the other thing that happened was experiential learning. So I'm an adjunct faculty member at the New School, which is in New York City. And so there's a green roof ecology class. So that was an outcome of this roof project as well. And so these are some of the roof projects in New York City, the large scale ones that have a lot of like institutional funding. So the prime produce is in the left corner, and then if you continue to the right, it's New School. There's a project called Kingsland Wildflower, and then at the top is Brooklyn Grange, and then the other one is the Javits Center, which is our convention center in New York City. So it's gotten me into stormwater mitigation, and then also talking with students. So they're design students and policy students, so they work together on a group project and create educational materials or designs for buildings, and it's really inspiring to be able to share that with them. So I really appreciate you listening and being here and sharing space with me. It's been a pleasure being here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah, thank you so much.